We're in the intro. Stand by for countdown.
I'll be explaining that this morning, Pete.
Okay, good. Be glad to.
Twenty seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
Good morning and welcome to the Wednesday, October 12th, 2022 Board of County Commission meeting. I am Nicole Gibbs, your Community Relations Specialist. This week, Fire District 1 is celebrating the 100th anniversary of Fire Prevention Week. This year's campaign focuses on Fire Won't Wait, Please Escape. It works to educate everyone about simple but important actions they can take to keep themselves and those around them safe from home fires. Today's homes burn faster than ever. You may have as little as 2 minutes or even less to safely escape a home fire from the time the smoke alarm sounds. Your ability to get out of a home during a fire depends on early warning from smoke alarms and advanced planning. To learn more about fire prevention, you can visit www.nfpa.org/FPW Fire Prevention Week. The 2022 general election is quickly approaching. The deadline to register to vote for the election is Tuesday, October 18th. To find registration information and dates for upcoming early in-person voting, you can visit sedgwickcounty.org/elections. Sedgwick County Zoo has brought back their one-of-a-kind Asian lantern sculptures that light up the zoo called Wild Lights. Wild Lights is open now through December 4th. Tickets can be purchased online at szz.org. Commissioners, taking a look at today's agenda, you will have a funding agreement between the Sedgwick County, the Zoo, and Exploration Place, a zone change request, a consideration of the local emergency operations plan, a resolution creating the Food and Farm Council, and a report from the Board of Bids and Contracts. With that, I turn the meeting over to you, Chairman.
Nicole, thank you very much. I want to welcome all of our friends that are in the audience today and those that are joining us online. We appreciate it. We do have guests from both the Exploration Place and the Zoo in the board room today, so thank you very much for attending. A couple things. We are going to add an off-agenda item right after Boards and Bids and Contracts this morning to discuss a letter of support for going to Secretary Pete Buttigieg in order to support a request by the City of Wichita. And also, we do have a police chaplain in the audience when we call for the invocation. I've asked him to make sure that he has a special prayer for our Sedgwick County Deputy Sheriff, Sidney Carter. In addition, at the end of his invocation today, before we go into our flag salute, we're going to have a moment of silence for Sidney. So I just wanted to let you know there's a couple changes to our agenda today. So with that, I'd like to call a meeting to order for October 12th, 2022. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Invocation to be led by Chaplain Robert Robinson, New Salem Missionary Baptist Church, with a moment of silence. Please remain standing for the flag salute.
Good morning. May we pray. Heavenly Father, again, we thank you for this day and for all that thou hast done. We pray right now that thou would bless the efforts of our labor this day, that your perfect will be done this day. Touch the committee, Lord, as they meet, as they agree, as they enter in all the changes that need to be made. And again, we just thank you, Lord, for all you've done, for the life that you've given us, for the opportunities and the blessing that you afforded us. Now we pray for the Carter family, Sidney Carter family, Lord, as they grieve. We pray that thou would give them peace, comfort, love. Wrap your arms around them, Lord. Protect as only you can these men and women that dedicate their lives for us, that we might have freedom, liberty, Lord. Again, we just thank you. We praise you. In the Christ Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Now for our moment of silence. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Chaplain, thank you very much for being here today. We sincerely appreciate it. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Roll call. Commissioner Meitzner.
Present.
Commissioner Cruz.
Present.
Commissioner Howell.
Present.
Commissioner Lopez.
Present.
Chairman Dennis.
Present. Next item, please.
Public agenda.
We did not have anyone sign up online for any public comments last night, and I have not heard of any public comments signed up here in person. So next item, please.
New business. Item A, funding agreement between Sedgwick County and the Sedgwick County Zoological Society, Incorporated.
Morning, Tim.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Tim Cochran, your Deputy County Manager for Public Services. Before I get into the details of this funding agreement, I'd like to remind you and our audience of some of the successes that our zoo has had over the life of the current funding agreement as a result of this highly successful public-private partnership. Since 2018, as part of the comprehensive strategic and 25-year master plan, Sedgwick County Zoo has opened a new energy-efficient entrance and administrative building along with a modern, inviting zoo store. They've expanded and greatly improved the leopard habitat as part of the Slauson family Asian Big Cat Trek. They've introduced stingrays and sharks to the community through the Stingray Cove. They most recently opened the new Martha C. Buford Express train experience to give riders a completely different view of the zoo, all while maintaining excellence in animal husbandry and maintaining accreditation with the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. While the zoo is often seen as an educational and entertainment experience, the zoo also brings quality of life and quality of place value to the community, and it has an economic development impact. Dr. Jeremy Hill and his team at the Wichita State University Center for Economic Development and Business Research recently completed a study that indicated an economic impact of $59.4 million each year based on their activities. Similar to previous funding agreements, this agreement has a 5-year term that begins January 1st, 2023 and runs through 2027. The agreement calls for the county to pay for personnel costs for county employees based on the agreed-upon staffing table and 1/2 of the annual budgeted capital improvement budget each year, approximately $400,000. There are 113.5 FTE on the staffing table right now, and the adopted budget amount for personnel costs is $7.2 million. This contract was approved by the Zoological Society Board of Trustees at their meeting on September 28th. And I'd like to acknowledge that Cheryl Wolford, the current board chair, is in the audience today, along with board members Janet Schwindeman, Sue Watson, Stan Andeal, Maverick Woodbridge, and our president and CEO, Scott Newland, is here as well. I recommend your approval of the agreement, and I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you, Tim. I appreciate it. I am on the board. I'm very proud to be on that board. It is probably the best board I've actually ever served on, so I appreciate that very much because every single board member is actively engaged in promoting the zoo and doing what's right. And the things that Tim just mentioned would never have happened without the leadership of the zoo board, in addition to our president of the board. So I want to thank each and every one of them for their service to our community. Now, our attorneys are probably the most conservative people in the world, and they told me because I do serve on the board that maybe I should abstain from voting on this item. So at the end, I am the last person to vote, so I don't anticipate there is any problem whatsoever, but I do have the opportunity to cast the last vote today. Again, it is just an absolutely great organization. We have two jewels here in Sedgwick County, and we're going to talk about the second one here in a moment with Exploration Place. But when you hear almost $60 million economic impact from the zoo for the amount that Sedgwick County puts in, it's probably one of the best returns on investment that we could ever have. So I am very pleased that we have this agreement on our agenda today. And at this time, I'm going to ask our Vice Chair if she would like to make a motion, since our attorney is very conservative.
Okay. Sorry. Yes, I would like to make a motion that we, approve the agreement and authorize the chairman to sign.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Beforehand, Scott, did you have anything you wanted to say? I apologize.
No, I'm good.
You're good. Okay. Okay, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez. Chairman Dennis.
Abstain. Well, thank you very much, and thanks. I know that you had to go through security and everyone to get up here today, but we appreciate your support, too, on this. Well, thanks. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item B, funding agreement between Sedgwick County and Exploration Place.
Tim, you're still on.
I am. Commissioners, as with the zoo, these are exciting times at another great public-private partnership in the area of quality of life, Exploration Place. Exploration Place has recently adopted a 5-year strategic plan and has been awarded an over $1 million infrastructure grant to begin work on an exciting reimagination of their 20-acre park area at Exploration Place. This summer, they produced and released a new dome film, Kansas, an immersive dome experience showcasing our home state from a drone vantage point. New movies, as well as a rich mix of permanent and traveling exhibits, has resulted in attendance records in recent months. Exploration Place continues to serve as an enjoyable education and entertainment experience while also having an economic development impact. Dr. Hill also studied Exploration Place and recently completed that study and indicated an impact of $21.7 million each year. Similar to the previous funding agreement, this agreement has a 5-year term that begins January of 2023 and runs through 2027. The agreement represents the same terms and conditions as the current 5-year agreement and has remained flat at the current rate of $2.2 million for over 10 years now. This contract was approved at the Executive Committee meeting on October 5th. And I'd like to acknowledge that Patrick Tuttle, the past board chair and Executive Committee member, is in the audience today, along with board members Linda Davison, Gail Malone. And I'd also like to acknowledge Adam Smith, the President and CEO. I'd be glad to answer any questions, but I recommend your approval.
Commissioner Lopez.
Okay, well, I also was advised to abstain, so Mike, don't give us that look. You're the one who told us. So I would like to first just thank Exploration Place for everything you guys are doing, and I know that this contract brings the stability to be able to take the next steps on what we're looking at. I mean, there's some really exciting things coming up in Exploration Place's future. I am very honored to be able to serve on this board. Like Chairman Dennis said, with the zoo, this is probably the best board that I sit on. It's the most fun when I get to leave the office and go be around a bunch of kids just having a great time to go to a board meeting. I mean, you don't get better than that. But I'm also really happy to be able to share that last time when Adam was here, we talked about almost 4,000 students that are in Title I schools at 259 have the ability to go to Exploration Place for free. And they just put out that we are now including about almost a little bit more than 5,000 additional kids from surrounding areas in Sedgwick County and also in 6 other counties around. So just really impressed with the work that you guys are doing, and the economic impact that we're seeing right now is just going to grow tremendously with some of the plans we have going forward. So just thank you so much for adding to the quality of life and everything that you're doing in our community.
Thank you. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. I'm excited to talk about these contracts. I will say that I am a supporter of Exploration Place. I do believe that the work that's happening over at EP is tremendous. I do have to ask, though, would the economic impact remain as substantial if they were given $2 million instead of $2.2 million?
I'd have to talk to Dr. Hill about that.
Okay. So I guess those are the uncomfortable conversations when we look at the building being paid off, when we looked at the future of the county, when we look at actually doing diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. What are the action steps that we're taking to be equitable with our funding in this community? I mentioned last night on the health forum just these questions. These are uncomfortable conversations. These are uncomfortable questions to ask. But when we look at the cultural elements and the educational opportunities around our community, are we being equitable with that funding? So while I'm hesitant to support this today, I will, but this is the last time that I'll support maintaining this funding given the opportunities that we could have in our community if we were to spread the funding that we have that is limited to other educational opportunities in our community so that we are following and being action-oriented with diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just thinking about the job of a county commissioner, there's 4 big parts of what county commissioners do. We deal primarily with quality of life, human services, infrastructure, and public safety. So if you break it down what county commissioner does, those are the big 4. With respect to I say we spend a lot of time as a commission talking about the other 3, but today we're talking about quality of life. And I wasn't going to say anything during the zoo presentation. They're very, very supportive. I think the zoo, most of us as county employees were out there just a couple weeks ago and got to enjoy it once again. It is a jewel of our community, and the fact that this has a $60 million impact in our community it just shows that we're getting all of the taxpayer money back and a whole lot more. So it's actually an investment in a community that actually makes life better for everyone. And, everyone can access the zoo. It's no matter who you are, there's all kinds of ways for people across the entire county to enjoy that zoo. And they've been very accommodating to people regardless of their socioeconomic status. They've been very, very gracious. I can't say anything less about Exploration Place. I thankfully, I don't have to recuse myself this morning, or I should say abstain, because I'm not on that board today. I have been on that board in the past, and I loved it. It was wonderful. And I think about our director of Exploration Place, Adam Smith. He has a vision on how to make this so much better. It's moving up in a way that I think that it reminds me almost like Dr. Bardo had a vision for at WSU. That's where Adam Smith right here has a vision for how EP is going to continue to grow and be greater in this community. And I'm excited. I don't know the details of the CIP you mentioned this morning, but I'm excited about that because I know this is going to be great for the community. I'm out knocking doors with some of my colleagues, talking to people at the doors. That they want things like Exploration Place to thrive, and I think it is thriving today. The economy is very tough. I'm sure you're having labor challenges and wage issues, just like everybody else is. We've had a 14% increase in inflation in the last year and a half. That impacts our commodities and our labor, and everything out there has had to pivot to deal with this inflation rate, this high inflation. To have static funding, again, for the next 5 years is actually a reduction in what you're able to do with those dollars. The dollars do not go as far as they used to. It would be reasonable to ask for an increase, but you didn't do that. You're asking for level funding. So I want to recognize that, number one, it is a very conservative request. I'm glad to support that. But number two, I think this has such a huge impact on our community. I can't imagine stripping a couple $100,000 out of this request because we want it to shift money someplace else in the county. I think we have to invest in Exploration Place, and it's going to pay dividends in this community. So I'm glad to support this. In fact, if you don't mind, I would like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion. We would approve the agreement with Exploration Place and authorize the chairman to sign.
Thank you. I'll second that. Commissioner Meitzner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the board members of the zoo and Exploration Place that are here. I know most of you personally, and I can't thank you enough for your dedication. I know that as board members, you don't get paid much more than a lunch during the meetings, and but your dedication to the community and your personal and financial commitments in capital improvement projects and other things is duly noted, at least by me. And I was going to mention it, but Mr. Howell already said it. 9% inflation on $2.2 million is about another $200,000 by itself, and it's been static for the 10 years. And I appreciate everything and what the zoo has accomplished in the last year with the Martha Buford train and the front is just incredible. And it's just very impressive when you walk up and participate. And the Exploration Place is the next big frontier with what your vision is, Adam. And I know you've got momentum going on incredibly well along the river. It embraces the community, and I'm excited for that to continue to go forward. So I just wanted to extend my thanks to each of you board members on both parties. And I've never heard a conflict between the zoo and Exploration Place, which is comforting for me to know that there's no conflict there. Maybe there is behind the scenes, but at least I don't know it. So my sincere appreciation and thank you.
Thank you. A couple of years ago, the Exploration Place Board was trying to find a new leader, and they hired Adam Smith. And I really didn't know him at that point in time. Then we went into COVID. And what impressed me during COVID, instead of backing up, they went forward. They added programs. They reached more children at any point up to that. So things grew during COVID, and that's thanks to the leadership and the imagination on how to still provide the services that we want to provide to the community. So again, I have such respect for the leadership of both the zoo and Exploration Place because of what they're doing for our community and for our kids especially. So I support this motion, and I don't see any other comments. Madam Clerk, call roll.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Before I say aye, I want to thank Chelsea. I see you did the agreement, and I know you're in you're getting ready to move into another department, and so you will be missed, but I saw your name, and so I just wanted to recognize you and thank you for all the things you've done for us. Anyway, with that, aye.
Commissioner Cruz. Aye. Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Abstain.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Motion passes. And again, thanks to both boards and the leadership of both those organizations for being here. You are truly both jewels. Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item C, ZON 2022-00041, zone change request in the county from SF20 single-family residential to GC general commercial to permit warehouse self-storage with outdoor storage on property located on the south side of West 53rd Street North and approximately 400 feet east of North Ridge Road, 7015 West 53rd Street North.
Before we start, Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. I have had ex parte conversations via phone and also at my Citizens Advisory Board.
Thank you. Does anyone else have ex parte contact? I don't see anyone. Oh, Scott, you're on.
Good morning. So this item is being presented today because valid protests have been received against the application. In terms of the application, the applicant is requesting rezoning from SF20 single-family zoning to GC general commercial zoning. The applicant has indicated it's their intention to use the subject site for warehouse, self-storage, vehicle storage yard, and outdoor storage uses. The applicant is proposing to construct storage buildings on the site and to divide the property into 4 parcels, and I'll show you a site plan in the graphics that shows how that would occur. In terms of the property, the subject site is generally located south and east of the intersection of 53rd Street and Ridge Road, which you can see on the aerial here. Subject site for this application currently consists of one unplatted parcel that is approximately 3.27 acres in size. And it is, again, currently zoned SF20. In terms of context, the property to the north of the subject site is zoned rural residential and is developed with a single-family house. The property to the south is zoned SF20, residential, and is undeveloped. Property to the east is zoned SF20 and is developed with a single-family residential dwelling. Properties to the to the west are zoned LC limited commercial. I'll show the graphic here, and SF20 single-family residential. The property that is LC is undeveloped, and the property zoned SF20 is developed with a single-family residential home. In terms of the staff report for this item provides additional information on parking, screening, and the sign code for this particular property. In terms of review, on September 1st, the Planning Commission considered this application and held a public hearing. The MAPC recommended approval of the request unanimously, 12-0. No members of the public spoke on this item. On September 12th, the CAB considered this application. The CAB recommended approval of the request with a 5-0 vote. Both MAPC and CAB recommended approval with a protective overlay, which is described in the staff report, and it addresses limiting the uses of the GC zoning, restricting where the outdoor storage and vehicle storage yard can take place, limits on what can be stored at the site, specifies what the sign limitations are, and requires a site plan. Multiple protests were received for this case and totaled approximately 30% of the protest area and exceeded the state 20% threshold. Therefore, a motion to approve must be approved with a supermajority of 4 or 5 votes. In terms of alternatives, well, let me get to the recommendation first. It is recommended that the BOCC adopt the findings of the MAPC and authorize the chairman to sign the prepared resolution. Again, this would require 4 out of 5 votes. Alternatives include the following. You can deny the application by making alternative findings and override the MAPC. This would require a 2/3 majority of 4 out of 5 votes. You can always return the case to the MAPC for further consideration with a statement specifying the basis for failure to approve or deny the application, and this would require a simple majority vote. So with that, I'll switch over to showing you some of the graphics and maps from this case. So here again is the aerial. You can see that the property is undeveloped. You can see where it is in relationship to the neighbors and how they are in use. This is the map of the zoning. You can see that there's a large area of SF20 in the vicinity. You can also see rural residential and the one property that is zoned LC. This is the map from the comprehensive plan. It recommends new employment in the area as well as agricultural use at the site. This is a site plan that was submitted as part of the application by the applicant. It shows the division of the property in the future, at least what's proposed. It shows storage units at the north, a certain section of the property for outdoor storage, and then residential uses to the south. This is the protest map. Again, the protest was at 30% of the protest area, so it exceeded the state threshold of 20%, therefore requiring the 4 out of 5 votes to approve. Here are some photos from the site. Looking across, looking to the east, to the west, and back to the aerial. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions of Scott? Commissioner Cruz?
No, I just wondered if there was, are you going to open it up for public comment?
I am. I'm going to go to the applicant first and then public.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see anything. Applicant or agent?
Good morning. Phil Meyer with Boffman Company, agent for the applicant. With me here today is Bree Russell, who is the applicant on this zone change. If you have specific questions for her, she'll be glad to come up and answer those. If I could, would you mind going back to the protest petition as a graphic? I can do it myself. Okay. Thank you there. All right, that'll help me just a little bit. So we did apply for the GC zoning district on this. That's the only way we could do the outdoor storage on the south third of this site was to ask for GC. We volunteered the protective overlay to take it back to office warehouse. It's a little bit of a kink in our zoning code in that we cannot, our intention is to use the front 2/3 of this site as a storage facility with buildings where you can store your stuff inside of it. The south or the back third would be for RVs, boats, campers, things like that, which is in high demand now, especially more even after COVID, these types of uses. These are typically a very quiet neighbor, in our opinion. It does take a little bit higher zoning, but there's not a lot of traffic, not a lot of activity in that. The one thing that the staff report did not mention, and I'll point out to you, the northwest corner of this, which is now annexed into Mays, was zoned limited industrial in the county. So after the county approved limited industrial zoning on that northwest corner along 53rd, Mays eventually annexed that ground. So it's not showing up as property. I think our point for you today is the protest petition. Neither of those two, and they may be here today, I'm not sure, neither of those two were at Planning Commission or CAB to protest this property. Both of those parcels of ground have had zoning on them in the past for sand pit operations. The piece immediately to the north, which is the majority of it, is a sand pit today. It's wrapping up, it's getting to the end of it, and I don't know the time frame. I just found out about the protest petition yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to do my homework, but for 10 years, that's been a commercial operation as a sand pit. It's put more commercial traffic out on that road system than we will with our storage units. So I think what I'm driving at, we think our application is appropriate. We think it's a good use. We did not have opposition from immediate neighbors. I mean, I know we have one across the street, but I find that ironic that it's a commercial operation that is opposing this. We would like this approved today, and we're going to ask you if the county commission is willing to please approve this the way we're going forward. If you could have a little, if I may request, you have a little discussion amongst yourself before you vote. If it looks like we don't have supermajority or 4 out of 5, I'm going to request a deferral so we have some time to figure this out and maybe meet with the neighbors. Or if you want to send it back to planning, I'm fine with that. But we really haven't had a chance to figure out how we want to go forward. So if this is an issue for the commissioners, I'm going to tell you, call me back up here. Let's discuss a deferral. If it's not an issue, we'll get it approved today and move forward. And with that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Okay, any question of Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you for being here today. I wondered if I could just ask Scott a real quick question and then maybe call you back up.
Yes, ma'am.
Scott, could you just reiterate what the protest petition entailed?
Sure.
What was the reason why people are protesting this?
I don't have copies of the protest petitions with me, but the language on the protest petition is essentially that you're opposed to the application that's been received for this case. And so in that situation, I would interpret that as they would be opposed to the rezoning as requested.
Okay. So if you wouldn't mind coming up and just...
Yes, ma'am.
Why do you think people are opposing this?
I do not know why. I haven't had a chance to figure that out. So I've got 2 landowners that are opposing it. The one on the far east is an old sand pit that now is a single-family residence. The one to the north is a sand pit operation that's just now wrapping up, which has been, I know I'm being redundant, has been a commercial use on that site for quite a while. I don't know why they're opposing that. And they never made that public at Planning Commission or CAB.
Sure.
And I apologize. I wasn't at the CAB meeting. I had to send Thomas because I had like 4 meetings that night. And we divvied out to all the different meetings, but
okay.
We haven't heard why they're opposed.
Okay. Bree, did you have anything you wanted to add? Okay. Okay. Well, with that, Chairman, I don't know if any other commissioners have comments or questions. You know, up until now, I have kept an open mind. I did hear this was a conversation we had at my Citizens Advisory Board. I will say that I am a supporter of property rights. I don't see any real aversion. I know that in the 4 years that I've been up here, every single time we've had somebody who wanted to do storage, there were concerns around property values decreasing and crime because of additional things coming in, but I haven't heard any of that today. So again, I want to make sure that we hear everybody that has concerns about this, that time has come and gone. And with that, Chairman, I don't see a reason to not support the property rights of this property owner, and I would make a motion to approve the zone change and to follow the MAPC recommendation.
Second.
Thank you. We have a
Mr.
motion
Chairman.
and second. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, have we asked whether anybody here is, whether there is any public comment? I don't believe we
That's a
have.
good point. Thank you, Mr. Papone. Does anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this subject before we vote? Seeing no one, Madam Clerk, call roll.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Thank you all. Next item, please.
Item D, adoption of local emergency operations plan.
Morning, Julie.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. Julie Stimson, Director, Sedgwick County Emergency Management. I bring before you today a request to adopt a resolution that adopts our Sedgwick County Local Emergency Operations Plan. The Emergency Operations Plan is required by Kansas State statute and is how the county documents compliance with the Presidential Homeland Security Directives 5 and 8, which require local governments to adopt the fundamental principles, language, and concepts embedded within the National Incident Management System and the National Response Framework. Just a little bit of background of what is in this plan. The Sedgwick County LEOP, which is the Local Emergency Operations Plan, pretty much was in the review process over the last year with about 30 partner agencies to come together through facilitated discussions, reviews of lessons learned through exercises and real-world events to pretty much create this framework on how we operate during disasters. How do we prepare for disasters? How do we respond? And how do we recover from them? This is achieved, again, like I said, through lessons learned from past exercises and real-world events. As we were actually reviewing this plan, we had the April 29 tornado, so we were actually able to live test, if you will, some of the components of this plan and make tweaks where needed. So the plan is not a set black and white procedure. It is a framework of how we operate during disasters, and it becomes active once we have local disaster declarations and we stand up our Emergency Operations Center. It is available on our webpage for review. It's about a 320-page document, and the Kansas Division of Emergency Management has reviewed this and has approved our plan as meeting the minimum qualifications to be a local emergency operations plan. So I ask for today for adopting the resolution that locally adopts the Sedgwick County LEOP.
Well, thank you, Julie. I appreciate it. I know you came around and briefed each commissioner individually. Well, actually, two and one.
Yep.
And you brought the large book with you. I know Commissioner Howell read the whole thing, didn't you?
Twice. She read it twice.
But it is very detailed. We appreciate all the work that went into that. Commissioners, are there any questions? Commissioner Howell.
Well, just to your point, thank you, Chairman. Just to your point, I tried to find some holes in your document. It's good. You did a great job. I didn't get to read the whole thing. I did peruse it, and it is I'll tell you, it's just very comprehensive.
Yes.
And I tried to think of what are we not prepared for. Honestly, preparedness is a huge part of public safety. The community may not realize this is even going on until an emergency is in our backyard and we have a problem, and someone is thinking ahead, someone has a plan, and that's you. And this entire part of emergency management is a big part of public safety. So I'm glad to know that we have this in place. I'm glad to know we're practicing it, we're exercising it, we're reviewing it, we're training it, and it's there if we need it. Lord willing, we don't ever need it, but if we need it, we have it. And I've tried to poke some holes in this document. Right now, I can't find any holes. So I'm thrilled. And you say to meet some minimum requirements of KEMA. I really think this is well above and beyond what they would even require. This is a very comprehensive document. It's in my opinion, it's a total rewrite from what we had before. It started from ground up. I'm just curiously, can you please describe the the amount of effort that it took to make this document be refreshed that we see today?
So we have an emergency planner that is pretty much the responsibilities is to manage all of our county plans and coordinate and facilitate discussions. So one of the biggest changes we made is it wasn't emergency management writing this plan. It was our partners coming together and all of us collaboratively creating this plan. And that was probably why it's so comprehensive this time, is we've got more specific expertise voices in the room telling us, here's what we really do, and here's what we need to do. And so Reagan Bender is my emergency management planner, special shout out, because he put a lot of hours into this with meeting with fire chiefs, police chiefs, our volunteer organizations, just a plethora of partners to facilitate discussions and kind of guide this project into completion. So it was a very, very large undertaking with a lot of hours put into this.
Well, I just want to say well done for everyone involved. And without going into the details, seriously, I thought about, if I was a terrorist, how would I come to this community and do damage to the community in a really big way? You thought of everything. And I just want to say this is great. This is very, very, very well done. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion when it's the appropriate time, but this is fantastic.
We'll see if Commissioner Meister has to say it, and I'll turn it back to you. Commissioner Meister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner Howe, for your comments. Julie, I just wanted to, for me, when we work as you're the boss of a department, and traditionally we only see and interact formally, but to work alongside and see your actions during the Andover tornado really gave me confidence that your ability to communicate across all of that coordination stuff, and then here 6 months later having a document like this, it was easy for me to feel like after watching what happened during the tornado to have trust that I'm sure you covered everything. On page 287, no, I'm kidding. Anyway. No, but my thanks, and it's sometimes these hard tragedy type things put us in a working environment that we never would have had before, but it's like I said, it's just comforting, and congratulations on all that you've been doing. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Howe.
Thank you. Just as a final comment, again, we're not just being internally focused here. We're talking about our partners across county lines, the Air Force Base, the state of Kansas. Every city has connections to this document. They depend on us to have a plan. So the cities don't have to have a plan. They look to the county to lead when those bad things happen. So this is such an important part of what we do here in public safety. So again, thank you for your team and all your good work. With that, Mr. Chairman, the word adopt is in here twice, but I'm going to read it exactly as it says here. I make a motion that we would adopt the resolution to adopt the Sedgwick County Local Emergency Operations Plan.
Thank you. I'll second that. Any further discussion? One final point. We do have a quad county, and Justin has been rewriting that. One of the things that I've seen over the past 6 years is that emergency management actions don't stop at the county lines. And so most of the things that I see when we go to Quad County are things like fires over in Reno County and tornadoes in Sedgwick and Butler County and so forth. So I'm glad that emergency management is now part of our Quad County also. So we have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, call roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Aye. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howe.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Thank you, Julie. We
All right.
appreciate all the work.
Thank you for your support. I
Tell
appreciate
your
it.
staff thank you, too.
Yes, will do.
Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item E, resolution creating the Food and Farm Council.
Well, you don't look like Adrian.
Good morning, Commissioners and Board of Health. This is Tim Kaufman on behalf of Adrian. She was called away on an emergency. So thanks for the opportunity to present again. And this is another fine example of a collaborative effort. Lots of people have been involved in the food system master plan, and this is kind of the next step in that process. So for the community, as a reminder, food system is the process food follows as it moves from farm to table. It includes all of the activities, people, and resources involved in producing, transporting, processing, packaging, buying, cooking, eating, disposing, and reusing food. The process, the food system impacts public health, equity and access, the economy, the environment, and social determinants of health. And a food policy council partners residents, stakeholders, and policymakers to examine how the local food system operates by bringing together diverse stakeholders to develop recommendations and advice that will improve the food environment. To gain a deeper understanding of areas for systemic change, the Health and Wellness Coalition of Wichita, alongside with the City of Wichita and Sedgwick County, facilitated community engagement efforts to inform the creation of the Wichita-Sedgwick County Food System Master Plan. And that plan's goals are to foster food system coordination and education, improve access to healthy food, and increase local food production. The plan includes the creation of the Wichita-Sedgwick County Food and Farm Council to serve as an advisory board to the City of Wichita and Sedgwick County. The council will provide a forum for food system collaboration by convening stakeholders and accessing all of the different elements of the food system, engaging those stakeholders in developing policy recommendations, just recommendations, to the governing bodies and increasing awareness of funding opportunities amongst food system partners to encourage alternatives to conventional food systems. The Board of County Commissioners and the City of Wichita City Council adopted the Food System Master Plan earlier this year. This joint county resolution, city ordinance, is another step in operationalizing the master plan. The purpose of the Food and Farm Council is to convene stakeholders and advocate for a resilient food system in the City of Wichita and Sedgwick County, and provide you recommendations in terms of policy that may help in that regard. I recommend adoption of the resolution creating the Food and Farm Council. As I mentioned earlier, this is the work of a large number of people. A few names that I want to mention: Brooke Kowchak from the City of Wichita, an AmeriCorps member and Lead for Kansas Fellow, has been deeply involved in this. Others include Kim Neufeld, Anthony Seiler with the Sedgwick County Farm Bureau, and I'd also like to acknowledge the work that Chelsea Anderson has done on this joint resolution with the City of Wichita Legal Department. I'd be happy to answer any questions or maybe ask some of the experts in the room since Adrian's not here.
Well, thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. I don't see any questions at this time. I know that the Farm Bureau is deeply involved in this, and since my district is mostly rural, it's important that they were involved. Anthony's in the room. Do you have anything you'd like to say today?
Take it now. Thank you.
Very good. Well, I actually don't see any questions because this is something we've been working for quite some time, and it's a partnership between a lot of organizations. So I am very happy that we're to the point now that we can create the Farm Council. So I move that we adopt the resolution. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez. Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Thanks for all the work on this. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Item F, report of the Board of Bids and Contracts regular meeting on October 6, 2022.
And my agenda says Joe Thomas. That doesn't look right either.
I'm sorry to disappoint you, sir. Brett Rosencutter, purchasing agent. The regular meeting of the Board of Bids and Contracts of October 6, 2022 resulted in 2 items that we are seeking your approval. The election office mailing for 2022 general election, the election office recommend to accept the quote from Express in the amount of $85,240.68. And the other item is 2 minivans for ComCare, Fleet Management and ComCare. Recommend to accept the bid from Rustiek Ford Incorporated in the amount of $62,994. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, and I recommend approval of both items.
Thank you. I appreciate it. During agenda review, I had a number of questions on a postcard. Since that time, I did have a meeting with Angela, and she just walked in the room, so I appreciate that. She did send me a copy of the postcard, exactly what's going to be sent, and the purpose of this is to see if we can get people to the early voting locations as soon as possible, and that's going to alleviate the lines on November the 8th. So I don't have any objection to what she has put together at this time. And before we have a vote, Commissioner Howell, if you have a question, and if any commissioners would like to see this, she did send it to me. Commissioner Howell.
Yeah, I unfortunately was not able to be part of the agenda review, and the audio was not usable. So I tried to listen to it, but I couldn't get some understanding exactly what was going on there. So the backup material is talking about yard signs also. What's it talking about? What does it mean by yard signs here?
Good morning, Angela.
Good morning, Commissioners. Angela Cadillo, Sedgwick County Election Commissioner. The yard signs, that is a small part of the expenditure, but what we wanted to do is put a yard sign that has a QR code. What it's going to say is, am I at the right polling place? It will allow people as they're coming up or waiting in line to check and make sure they're in the correct polling place. What we did see in the primary election was people were waiting in lines, and then when they got to the check-in, they realized they were not in the correct polling place. Which resulted probably in a lot of provisionals that could have been saved otherwise. Had they known ahead of time, they may not have waited in the line and gone to their correct polling place. But after waiting for some time, I think people were reluctant to leave and then go to the correct polling place and potentially wait again.
So it says 600 yard signs. That's a lot more than our number of polling places.
Correct. We anticipate that those they'll be used up, so we anticipate that that we'll have a couple at each site, and then that should be a stock to keep putting out for quite a while to come.
Okay, and is that being okay? The same company is doing both the yard signs and the postcards?
Correct. We did ask for the bid together.
Okay. These postcards also are voter unique. In other words, it tells that particular voter where to go to vote. So there's details on that postcard that's unique to that particular voter. It's not just a generic postcard that goes out. The same information is not going out to everybody, but these are tailored, if you will, to the electors. Is that correct?
Correct. What we have done is to reduce costs. What we are planning to do is send a postcard to each household with a registered voter. It will be addressed to registered voters. So if there is more than one registered voter at the household, there will still be only one postcard that goes, and the variable data that will be on the front of the postcard will include the election day polling place.
Okay. And how much is this per postcard? Do we do the? I haven't done the math there. You know how much it is per postcard? So we're talking about $82,000 for roughly $82,000 for the postcards, and this is going out to how many? 233 pieces of mail? 233,000 pieces of mail?
Correct. So our total active and inactive registered voter is around 333,000. When we broke it down by household, that's the number we came up with. So that includes the design, the setup, and the design is done in-house. That includes the setup, the printing, and the postage.
And you're sending this out to inactive voters also?
No.
So no inactive, but only one per household.
Correct.
And if they don't have a history of voting in the last number of elections, we still send them a card because they're still in the voter rolls?
Correct. We're sending to every household with an active voter. So the active status, if they don't have a history of voting in a specific number of elections, they may not be in active status. But if they are in active status, if there is one person at the household that is in active status, that household will receive a postcard.
I'll just say once again, I would rather see us increase our number of poll sites. I feel like I'm repeating myself every single election cycle. We need more poll sites, and I don't know what it's going to take to get there. Again, I would love to see a request for funding for what it would take to stand up more poll sites. To me, that's the better way to do this. We are the only county in the state of Kansas that does this postcard or does a mailing, trying to get people to vote early. Am I wrong about that?
You are incorrect. I
am correct or incorrect?
You are incorrect.
I'm incorrect. Who else does this?
I believe Johnson does. I think Wyandotte may as well. I would have to check with Shawnee.
That might be a change. Each time I've asked that question in the past, I was told that the Sedgwick County was unique in this strategy. And if you go back and you look at previous elections, we've had. To me, it changes who votes. It changes how the election is. The results of the election. One of the things that kind of surprised me was the number of people who voted, for example, in the general election 2020 before Election Day. It was around 65, roughly, % of the people had voted prior to Election Day. So any information that might come out that might change someone's mind, it's too late for that to be effective potentially. So again, I just think that when you have 2 weeks worth of voting, it is again, it's accommodating. But another way to accommodate people would be to website, radio, TV, advertising, billboards, all kinds of other ways to advertise. The options. But I think what we really are lacking here is an adequate number of poll sites, and that to me is where we're really we ought to be focusing on that issue. So I just say it every single time this comes up. So I'm really not in favor of this postcard, and so I don't know if.
Commissioner, if I may address the poll site issue, I would agree with you. I think that we do not have adequate infrastructure to support the number of election day voters that we would expect to have if we did not do such a mailing. I think it was in 2008, potentially, the number of poll sites was reduced significantly, and the previous election commissioner added several more, but we still need to add more. A request for funding is something that we are considering. However, along with that, we're going to need a request for not just the poll sites, but there will be more election workers, there will be more equipment, and things of that nature to sustain that. And along with equipment comes licensing fees and things like that. So it is a big package.
I know there's a lot of logistics that has to be worked out there. Some of these poll sites have a very large amount of equipment that we currently use. I imagine that you could take the equipment in one poll site and make it into 2 poll sites. You would have 2 places to access a voting opportunity, but it doesn't necessarily need more equipment if you split that up into 2 poll sites. We have so much equipment at one poll site. The problem is we just don't have enough poll sites. So how much more equipment we would need is not necessarily the driving issue here. It's the logistics of trying to find places to do this. ADA compliant, willing to put up with, if you will, people coming in and using their parking lot, all kinds of other stuff. So one thing I did find a statute this year talks about how public schools are by law required to, if you will give over spaces for election activities. That's in statute. So if we want to use public schools, they're all over the entire community, and we can access public schools as much as we want to. To me, that is a very easy solution to that concern about trying to find the right spaces. But once again, this may not seem like a lot of money, but it's $82,000, and here we are 8 days before people start getting their ballots. 8 days. It's a bit late in the process, and I just think this conversation should have happened months ago. And I don't know how effective this postcard is going to be at this point. And I think, again, if we had a general postcard that had exactly the same information to everybody, it probably would be less cost. But I am concerned about the fact that this is a very complex, late request, and it's roughly $82,000 for the postcards. I don't know that this is the right strategy once again. So I'm not sure I'm in favor of this piece. But thank you. Thank you for the chance to speak, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And again, Angela and I did have a nice discussion yesterday. And she recognizes that she needs to increase the number of polling locations, and she's working towards that for future elections. But right now, we've got what we've got, and we're trying to make sure that we can move people from in-person voting on November 8th to early voting at the different locations, and that's what's driving this. So, Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks for being here today. When do you expect this postcard to drop in mailboxes?
It would drop the last week of October, so right before our early voting starts.
Okay, so...
Right before satellite early voting starts, actually.
Okay. Understanding that not, for instance, we have 5 commissioners, but only 3 are up, so we have 2 districts full of people that will not have a commission race on their ballot. My question is, how much time do you think per voter it will take, given the number of questions on the ballot? So how many questions, on average, are on these ballots coming up?
So thank you for asking. It's approximately a 7-screen ballot as on our express vote. If we were to break that out, so you may recall that earlier this year we upgraded our software, which allowed us to put multiple contests on a screen. So that gets us to 7 pages. If we were to go and have 1 per screen, it's 38 pages so on average. So about 38 specific things to vote on. We have locally judges. We have obviously the statewide candidates, the national candidates, local candidates such as county commission and township. There are a couple cities that have candidates up. We have Supreme Court judicial retention and Court of Appeals judicial retention, 2 constitutional amendments, and then USD 259 has a question. So It's a fairly long ballot. I don't know that everyone will vote every race up and down the ballot, but by law, if there's someone waiting, a voter has 10 minutes to get through that ballot. I do believe that should be sufficient time.
So I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that during the August 2nd primary, we had voters, particularly at Linwood Recreation Center, who waited up to 3 hours to vote. Some parents with children, very patient children, I will add. So I think what we'll see is a more significant wait time because of the length of the ballot that they'll be voting on. So I think it's important to push people to early voting just so that we don't see, everybody wants that 7 o'clock deadline on November 8th. People want those results. And so I don't envy your job. I know that that's a huge pressure. You're in a pressure cooker on that day. So I'm supportive of this. I think there is enough time if it hits mailboxes the same day because people will be making decisions. So I appreciate your efforts in this. I do think that if we could do anything, it's increase the amount of wages that we pay our poll workers. Perhaps we'd have a larger pool of people who would be willing to work that day. But those are my comments. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. And Commissioner, how can I pass that down to make sure that the other commissioners have a chance to see it before they vote? Commissioner Meitzner.
Thank you, Chairman. Angela, good to see you. This recommendation to do this, I know when talking over the year as you were being interviewed and hired by Secretary of State, one of the things that he had mentioned was supporting you with a pretty seasoned and experienced consultant. And that person has now been around you for a month or so, helping?
That's correct. The Secretary of State's office has contracted with Connie Schmidt, who's a previous election commissioner from Johnson County. She's also advised other counties, other jurisdictions, including Minneapolis area, and has worked for the EAC. Connie Schmidt's come down. She's been here at least 3 times now to work with me. We're working on things such as staffing, looking at additional polling locations, things of that nature, and what we can do to restructure and reorganize the office to make it the most efficient office we can possibly make it. So when we were talking, we did have the ability to look at the number of voters assigned per polling site. As we look, we've had a lot of growth in some specific areas and some specific precincts, and a precinct has to stay at a polling site. But when we took a look at proposed high voter turnout for this election and how many individuals are expected to not vote, expected to vote early, the remainder of those individuals we expect to vote on Election Day. We did have some polling sites that have over 3,000 individuals that we believe would walk through the door on Election Day. With that in mind, we needed to make a decision, something that we could do to help drive people potentially to consider their options to vote either early or by mail. At this point in the game, sending out a postcard that promotes the locations for early in person seemed to be the best option, because if we sent out an application for advance by mail, we would likely receive a crushing volume of those and may not have the infrastructure to handle those. Sometimes those come with errors, and any errors have to be addressed, and if they're not addressed, they go out as provisionals. So we landed on this as the best way to try and address this. Additionally, every time I speak in front of the media, I'll be giving them the same information. Places that saw long lines during the primary are potentially likely to see lines again because of the number of voters assigned to each location. You may remember that in the 2 years prior to redistricting, we're not allowed to split up precincts. So those are some of the things contributing. But again, I do think adding polling locations in the future, we're exploring those options, and I think that will help to address some of those issues as well.
Okay, well, and this mailer was one of her recommendations as well?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I totally recognize everything that Commissioner Howell's been saying, and I do struggle with the cost component and the timing, and there's a lot. And I forgot that the census redistricting once every 10 years does have a pretty severe impact on the main person, which is the election commissioner, on this. So I'm I remember telling Secretary, and I think I said it publicly, that I want to support what we need to do to shore up and support you and your office. And so as much as I am reluctant to support that expense and reluctant on a lot of fronts, but I do respect that my commitment personally to support this office and Secretaries of State's efforts to help bring this up to speed. And this is one step, so I will be supportive of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Nicole, are the heat maps that Angela printed out over there, can you pass those out to the commissioners? And Angela, you may want to describe these as you did with me yesterday on why that these are important, on how that you make your decisions to make sure that we don't have long wait lines.
Sure. As you're looking at the maps, there's one that is that was from the primary, and so that will show you in red is a location or any precincts assigned to a polling place in which more than 2,000 individuals showed up. If you look at the general election, that's the one with all of the red, those are precincts that are assigned to a polling place that has more than 2,000 people assigned to that, that we expect to show up on Election Day. So that's the expected to vote. Again, if we take our total voter registration and we look at high turnout, which we think may be 65%, we remove those who are already permanent advance and then remove from that number 25% that we would traditionally expect to vote early in person without anything driving them to do so. That leaves 75% of that number. And those that you see in red, we expect to potentially have lines if people wait to vote on Election Day. Obviously, there's busier times on Election Day. The first part, when we first open it from 6 to 8, and then over lunch and after 5 are the busiest times. But all of those locations in red, you will see have an expected to vote number of over 2,000 individuals walking through the door on Election Day if we hit that high turnout of 65%. We're probably looking closer at 55%. Our typical has been 52 to 55% on a statewide midterm. But when we were looking at that, that's what drove us to the decision that we needed to see how we could inform people of their options to vote. Any opportunity that people have to vote not in those peak times is going to reduce their likelihood of waiting in line.
Good. One question, when you showed me these heat maps yesterday, I forgot to ask you, how did you develop these? Is it from our voting software, or where does this come from?
So every voter is assigned to a precinct, and every precinct is assigned to a polling place. We got the data of how many people were assigned to the polling place, and then did those calculations. We provided that information to GIS, and GIS's fabulous team put those together for us. We have those, and we plan to put those out on our website. You may recall last time I was here, I did let you know that it was our intention to put together some maps where people could look and see where the busiest precincts are that have the most people assigned, so they could kind of use that to make some decisions about how and when they decide to vote.
Very good. Well, you can see, I don't know how well the public can see it if we can get this on our website or someplace, but a large portion of Sedgwick County is red. So that's why that this is important today. One suggestion I did make to Angela when she came to speak with me is that we have a lot less questions when we hear it early rather than get it off of bid board. So providing this to all the commissioners before we go in and find out that this is past bid board would help us make decisions a lot easier. Commissioner Howell has a question.
I have a couple of questions. Thank you, Chairman. Did you consider changing the number of days advanced polling sites were going to be open?
Those were published ahead of time, but they are open 5 days.
I see that, but in previous years, I think it was more than 5 days.
Yeah, I have not taken a look at that at this time.
Okay. And you said one of your answers to a previous speaker was that we would see these postcards delivered around the end of October?
Yes, last week of October.
Do you have a goal date when that would be?
It's during that last week, so it depends on when the printer can finish the job and get them out.
Well, the following Monday is the last day to request a mail ballot. So you said these cards are going to the cards will inform the voters that they can request a mail ballot.
So if you look at the postcard, it does have information on where to go to request a mail ballot. It also has information on their election day polling place because we wanted to make sure we gave all of the information. Voters can request a mail ballot online. It is not required to send in that physical form, so there still should be opportunities for them to do that. But again, the primary goal is to give them the information regarding the early in-person locations and dates.
Okay, I'm sympathetic to the trying to inform people about where to go get information. If they were to go to a particular URL and look up where their poll site was, that to me is reasonable. If they knew about the advanced voting sites and where they were, that they are welcome to go to any one of them, that would be reasonable. I'm a little bit concerned about the lateness of these cards and in directing people to do mail ballots. Again, one of my concerns about mail ballots, again, they're a great option for many people, but there are some, I'll just say, when we do our canvassing, the vast majority of our challenges are mail ballots, by far. We have stacks and stacks, thousands of ballots many times that we have to deal with that are all kinds of challenges that come through those ballots because people don't follow instructions, they make mistakes. Many of the people who are disenfranchised, they intended to vote, but their vote's ultimately not counted because they trusted a mail ballot and they did something wrong. It was delivered late, it was misdelivered, they filled it out incorrectly, forgot to sign their name in the right spot. All kinds of things happen. And so the mail ballots, again, it's a tool for people who can't get to a poll site, but it really, in my opinion, is not equal to poll site voting. Also, the photo ID is not something where a person is actually looking at photo ID to make sure that someone who is actually the person is signing the envelope. So there's some concerns about security on mail ballots. I trust the process overall is pretty good, but there is a difference between someone at a poll site showing a photo ID and someone at home who doesn't have to show a photo ID to anybody. At the end of the day, if this card was generic and it simply gave information where to find the information, like the URL and where the advanced voting sites were and the dates and times, to me that would be more reasonable. But to tailor these to each and every single voter, to me is complicated. I'm concerned that there's going to be mistakes that will be made, and I don't know what liability we have if we make a mistake. Let me also point out, we passed Senate Bill, was it 130? I think it was. Is that the right number? Years ago, the Secretary of State could have solved a lot of this problem if he would have simply implemented the law that Sedgwick County advocated for. We helped write the law, advocated for it, testified in favor, it passed, the governor signed it, and then here we sit years later. Was that 4 years ago now? I think it was 4 years ago that this law was passed, and here we sit with a concern about long lines. I have one question about the Linwood in terms of the 3-hour wait. Do we ever analyze that and find out why there was the 3-hour wait?
Yes, it was a staffing issue. There was a new supervising judge, and there were some problems with that staffing. We believe we have that corrected, and we have a strong judge in that location. We don't think that that's going to be an issue again.
And when someone directed people to change poll sites from one to the other, that was also an error. Was that correct?
That is correct. That was an error.
So that was human error. So again, so it comes down to training, coming down to have people that know what to do and do the right thing. So I think people don't mind waiting some amount of time in line. I think 3 hours is excessive, obviously, but I don't know that we ought to try to get it down to 0. That may not be reasonable. So we have to find something that's reasonable in the middle. At the end of the day, we're using taxpayer money. Is this budgeted? This $85,000? Is this something that's in our budget currently?
Lindsay's out. I believe it was budgeted, Commissioner, but I'll double check it.
I don't think it was.
Okay, let me validate.
I don't believe it was budgeted, but okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, I still have some concerns about this. I think if our strategy was slightly different, I would probably support this, but as it currently is presented to us, the lateness of this, the fact that I don't believe it's budgeted, that maybe I'm incorrect on that, but one of our core missions here, core responsibilities in Sedgwick County as commissioners is to fund elections. And this is not necessarily the money that's caused me to do this. I think our strategy on how we have made these decisions to get to this point, I'm concerned. I think we have to take to me, by voting no today, I hope I waken somebody up and we can change the way we do the number of poll sites. And so Mr. Chairman, I'd like to divide the question. I'd be supportive of the second item on the Board of Bids on Contracts, but I want to vote no on number 1. So would it be acceptable to split the question?
We can do that.
Okay. I'll stop talking for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, Angela, thank you very much for being here today. I do want to echo Commissioner Howell's comments on Senate Bill 130. We pushed that so very hard. We had a lot of champions for it in the legislature. The governor signed the bill. It's hanging on the wall back there, I think. Isn't that the one that's on the wall?
Yeah.
We were very proud of that bill, and the Secretary of State, Scott Schwab, has stood in our way every step of the way, and we have not been able to implement that as a result of actions of the Secretary of State. So I am very disappointed in where we're at with Senate Bill 130 today. Again, I've already mentioned that talking to the board earlier probably is a better strategy to make sure that we all understand what's happening so that you don't have all these questions once it gets to this point. So at this point, I'd like to split the Board of Bids and Contracts. We'll take the item on the ambulances first, move to approve boards and bids and contracts on the ambulance. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez. Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Next, we'll take the request from our commissioners, election commissioner. Move to approve boards and bids and contracts for the postcard.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Howell.
Yeah, just thinking back about this, in the years past, we also used our print shop for this. This was planned long in advance, and I think they were actually much more comprehensive mailings. They had all kinds of, in fact, it was a mail ballot application that actually had some detailed information about the elector on the mailing. Is that correct?
Angela Cadillo again. Commissioner, my understanding is that the print shop, the design was done in-house, but the printing was done outsourced. It is a very large job, and especially when you're looking at an application, it was multi-page. My understanding that is that the mailing and the printing was done through a vendor. The design was done in-house. On this postcard, we did do the design in-house.
So I'll just say, in my 8th year here at the commission, this is the first time this type of request has come across this commission bench that I'm aware of. So, again, I think that I understand the reason for this. I wish we had a slightly different strategy on this, and I hope that we will find a way to get more poll sites going forward. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be voting no. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other comments. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
No.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Thank you. And Nicole, if you could pass out a letter that I'm going to talk about next. At this time, I'd like to add an off-agenda item to discuss a letter to Secretary Pete Buttigieg that supports a request from the city of Wichita. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner.
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez. Chairman Dennis.
Thank you. I know this is short notice and the commissioners haven't had an opportunity to review this letter, but it is a letter that's requested through our Public Works Department from the city of Wichita. They have voted on it, I understand, already to send this. The reason it's off agenda today is that the suspense to send this out is tomorrow. So it is a very short suspense. I just got it last night, printed it at home so that everybody would have an opportunity to take a look at the letter. But basically what this discusses is that if you look at 21st Street up along Broadway area, there are about 75 trains a day that go up and down the railroad tracks in that area. And with 75 trains, some of which stop on that railroad track for over an hour to couple, decouple, load and unload, and so forth, it cuts off a community. It divides it, and it divides it over and over again each day. So what they're asking is to support a 21st Street corridor public planning study, and so what the request is for Sedgwick County to sign this letter. I could have just signed this and sent it out. It would have sped things up. But this is important to make sure that the community knows what we're trying to do to help that community. So I wanted it to be presented in a public forum, as we are doing today, and to let the public know and the City of Wichita know that we are partners with what's happening in the City of Wichita on working to help alleviate a significant problem. So I'll start opening it up to questions. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. About a month ago, I had a conversation regarding this with Senator Carolyn McGinn, Senator Aletha Faustido, Councilmember Ballard. There has been a study done of this internally a while back. We discussed rerouting the trains, how they do stall. As the only commissioner who drives by this every single day, I drive up Broadway every single day to take my daughter to school. Just today, it has been shut down because they're doing some maintenance on this. So it is a real issue. I am supportive of this. I think this could mean a lot of connection opportunities for both the Black and brown community, and I'm excited that we're going to be moving this forward, hopefully. I wish I would have had a little bit more time to be involved in this, but I'm happy that we're having this conversation, and I'm supportive of this today, considering that it is in my district, and I drive by this every single day. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you. So just a couple quick questions. Thank you, Chairman. So Wichita brought this to us for our support?
Correct. Actually, they presented it to Lynn Packer yesterday, late, and I got a copy of this last night. That's why I printed it at home, so that everybody could have an opportunity to see it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just curious about when did Wichita learn about this, or did we know about this before Wichita brought it to our attention? This opportunity, I should say.
Morning, Jim.
Good morning, Jim Weber, Director of Public Works. I would just say a couple of things. This is a part of the program, Reconnecting Communities pilot program. It's part of the bill, the infrastructure package. We had seen the NOFO come out months ago. We had looked at it for things out in the county that might be applicable. We couldn't find one. We didn't look inside the city. They apparently did the same thing. I think we found out about it late last week. And Lynn was working with city staff and trying to tune up a letter that we could send for support. Let me just add, it's the study areas, 21st Street from Waco to Grove. They're asking for $1 million grant. It does require $250,000 local match, which they have not asked us to participate in. But because it's regionally significant, they've asked for the county support. I would have liked to have known about it sooner, but this is not unusual for them to work on something and then we find out about it a week before they want a letter. But I'm not complaining. This is a great project, and we would ask you to go ahead and support it.
Thanks for bringing up. Thanks for coming up to answer questions. So if the federal government then selects this as one of the projects, then what we're talking about is funding a study.
It's a planning study, which is kind of a little bit like on ARC 95. It's the early study, but it's expensive because it's a big area, requires a lot of public input. If they were to, get that, then I'm sure they go back into the pipeline again to try to get a more detailed study, and then there's a third way down is how do you fund actual construction.
So again, I don't know the criteria for this specific Connecting Communities grant for a study. But I would be remiss if I didn't at least talk about 47th Street and K15 a little bit. Did we consider that, whether that would be qualified for this type of a request?
We actually looked at that, and we couldn't find the significant sort of disconnection that they're looking for in this program. Where it's this one, we've got I-135, we've got 8 railroad tracks, we've got a whole rail yard working in there. And, as long as I've been driving, which is 50 years, this has been a problem up there. It predates that. It's a industrial complex built in there. And so it, I think, hits a whole lot of things that the program is trying to do, which is to get these disadvantaged communities connected back up with each other and back with the main community.
I'll just be upfront. I do support this, but if you wanted to make sure you can get past the trains at 21st Street, you probably will take 13th, right? So overpass at 13th.
I'd have to ask Commissioner Cruz. I don't drive it regularly.
I believe there's an overpass at 13th, so you can go under the rail at 13th Street. So if you really know that you have to get east to west or vice versa, you would probably take 13th versus 21st, because the 21st is pretty high risk in getting stuck. And if you do get stuck behind the trains, a lot of traffic then will divert and go over to 13th and go past the train. So, of course, at 63rd Street, I should say at 47th Street, the diversion is very long. They don't typically stop on 47th. They do sometimes. It doesn't happen every day. But when they do stop, it's it's miles, many miles to get around to the next place to cross the train. So I'll just say this: I'm going to continue to talk about 47th and K15, as well as 55th and K15 and 63rd and K15, and probably MacArthur K15. Those are 4 areas where I think that the train traffic has divided our community. There is a concern about public safety being accessible on one side and not the other. We have a very large call volume into the Oakland community, and yet you almost can't get there reliably because the train traffic, you really can't go down K15 any time of the day without seeing at least one train. It just happens constantly. So train traffic is certainly a challenge over there on the south side. And we only have really 2 arteries in my district that takes people to, north and south. That's K15 and Rock Road. K15 has this enormous challenge. And so I know that the state is aware of my request. I know there's some things being discussed, and I know there may be some opportunities coming up I probably can't talk about right now, but I just want to make sure we don't miss an opportunity. If someone at the federal level is talking about grant opportunities, we want to make sure we engage that if it qualifies. Thank you again for answering questions. Again, I'll be supportive of the letter. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't know how many have had an opportunity to read the newspaper today, but it is on the front page of the newspaper if you wanted more details. Commissioner Meitzner.
Thank you, Chairman. Jim, were you around when Mayor Bob Knight and the city took on elevating the railroad tracks?
I was.
Barely, yeah. Ironically, this coming up, I've talked to former Mayor Bob Knight a couple times about how that all came to be and why didn't we elevate it near Derby and keep it elevated over the top? And his opinion was that was the best they could get at the time, was just elevated over the downtown corridor and over 13th and whatever. Is that your recollection?
I think that's fair. I mean, it was a little above my pay grade at the time. I did do the parts of the project that were out in the county. But it's all about money. And it's,
right.
We've got 2 railroads involved, major railroads involved. And we get along with them, but they're private corporations and they're there first. And if you got the money, you can do a lot of things around a railroad, but it's very expensive.
So is this plan to elevate or to tunnel or elevate 21st Street, or is it to work with the trains?
This is to go out, get a lot of input, look at some options, and try to figure out what some plans could be. So I'm imagining that they're going to look at elevating. They have before, I think.
Elevating the street. 21st Street versus...
Yeah, probably, in my opinion, going to be the most likely one, because anytime we try to take railroad over, those things go back a mile in each direction, and there's a lot of lines to do that too. So, but I don't want to predispose what's going to happen, but
sure.
The idea of this is to kind of start with a blank page and kind of work through what the options might be and what the cost might be. I'm sure it'll be very comprehensive. And I don't know that I expect that we'll be involved per se, but these grant applications, we do find that it's helpful to have community support. And I don't know if that means go get every business in the community, but if you're the city of Wichita, you want to see, and you want folks at the Department of Transportation to see that the other major local governing body is on board, and that's the county commission. So there's probably a lot of people trying to get to this money. There are a lot of disconnected communities that need help. But you just, like all of our grant experiences have been, you start in and you keep plugging away year after year until you hit one. Or maybe there's a change in the program. This is a pilot. They might change the criteria based on what happens with the first projects that they do.
Okay, well, yes. But I do understand that it is complicated to work with the rail owners. It's a challenge, no question. We've just had some good movement in the Amtrak news lately, and I know if we can get this to the finish line, one of the challenges will be working with the track owners on a stop down here for the downtown here, and that's a challenge that hopefully we'll get through as well. But so I'm supportive of this letter, and thanks for sharing at least what you know and some of the history. So thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other comments. I move that we approve the letter of support for the City of Wichita's request and allow the chairman to sign. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez. Chairman Dennis.
Aye.
Thank
you, Jim. Appreciate it. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Consent agenda.
Mr. Manager.
Good morning, Chairman and Commission. Tom Stolz with the County Manager's Office. Recommend approval of consent items G through Q this morning.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm supportive of the consent agenda, except I'd like to deal with the item K separately. So I'd like to make a motion to adopt the consent agenda items Gulf through Quebec minus Kilo.
I'll second that. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez. Chairman Dennis.
Aye. And now, would you please call item K as in kilo?
Item K, amended bylaws of the Sedgwick County Advisory Council on Aging and Physical Disabilities.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'm just not ready to vote on this yet. I don't understand what the changes have been made, and I'd like to review this. It's interesting. This is essentially an advisory board, but we call it an Aging Advisory Council. I would like to understand. We don't normally vote on bylaws of other advisory boards, so this one sounds like it's a little bit different. But to the extent there are some changes being made, I'd like to take some time to research that and know more what's going on. Can we have a couple of weeks to bring this back? I make a motion we bring this back in about 2 weeks.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? You have anything, Manager, for?
No, that would be fine, sir.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second, and I don't see any further discussion. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Meitzner. Commissioner Cruz.
Aye.
Commissioner Howell.
Aye.
Commissioner Lopez.
Aye.
Chairman Dennis.
Aye. Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Legislative issues.
Manager Stolz.
Good morning again, Commission. Tom Stolz. Tanya is not available today, so I'll run through the legislative platform this morning. Last night, Tanya sent you a revised version of the ongoing revisions to the document. I'll highlight today for the public what we're looking at with just some of the areas of change. Under ComCare, the third, fourth, and sixth bullets on the agenda, which deal with supporting a larger state initiative, a larger state group. We're trying to put some data in these bullets that are specific to Sedgwick County. And that's what all three of these bullets try to do by showing that if we, for example, under the third bullet, would receive at the state level a $3 million increase in funding for CMHCs, what that means for Sedgwick County specifically in the terms of a medical doctor, a therapist, and staff. We've followed through with that same with the Medicaid safety net language of an increase of 10%, what that 10% would mean, what the Sedgwick County could realize, and what that would mean for our county specifically. And then finally, bullet number 6 on inpatient beds. If there was a 10% increase, what that would mean, how many more beds Sedgwick County could realize out of that kind of initiative. So we're trying to, on these more global asks where we're partnering with a larger state group. We're trying to put flesh on that of what it means for Sedgwick County. Under developmental disabilities, bullet number 1, same issue. If there would be a restoration of $5 million, what that could bring to the county as far as dollars, and what those dollars could do as far as waiting list slots to reduce that wait for our clients. So if this is how you want the agenda to look, if we're moving in the right direction on that, that would be, I'd like a little bit of input on that so I could give it to Tanya and Jason. Under corrections, the third bullet, which the original document platform had said to take the stand your ground rule to post-audit. We've had a lot of discussion about that, and Tanya actually called the post-audit office to determine if that was the right venue for this kind of ask. I think we all understand what the task force wants here. They want this law looked at, but post-audit was not necessarily the proper venue, and the state audit office confirmed that. A better option for language for the commission to look at there if they want this on the agenda, or maybe even to take it off the agenda and refer it to the Senate or Legislative Judiciary Committee. That would be a more effective way to have the law looked at, or the AG's office. So we've changed it for now to say process or procedure, depending on what the will of the commission is of a strategy to move that forward. Under developmental disability, the first 3 bullets, we basically, again, just cleaned up language and began to put a specific county flavor to these asks. For example, the third bullet, in the original platform, it had 4,000 adults and children statewide that are needing services. Our share of that is 983 here in Sedgwick County. So we have quite a list of people waiting for services. So we tried to add that data on. And then the final change, we took the bullet number 1 of the Public Works asks off at the engineers and legal's request. So there is just 2 bullets remaining. Other than that, it is the same platform that we looked at a couple of weeks ago. We're trying to modify it as we go to get it closer to what the commission finds acceptable, with the end goal date of mid-November to potentially ratify it, the platform. So any input you have, if we're on the right direction, if we're on the wrong direction, please advise, and I will pass that along.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. I know Tanya's out of town today. You'll be carrying the information back to her. But I think we're kind of on the right track now, because we need to quantify what we're asking for and what the impact is going to be on the county for those asks. So I like the direction that you're going right now. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. As it relates to the policy section under corrections, the stand your ground bullet, I know that there was a meeting that was held, you had mentioned it. I wonder, we had Yenny tell us she asked to have a follow-up meeting so that someone from the task force could be in these conversations. How do we plan to make that happen?
Rusty, do you want to address that, or Yenny's might talk to the commission about anything that's different there? On this specific item, Commissioner, or just generally in global?
On this specific item.
Okay.
There's been talks about sending it to the Kansas Judicial Council. Also, Senator Fauskido was talking about drafting legislation in the review of Stand Your Ground as it relates to in-custody deaths. And so I wonder if we are going to explore what specific, we've talked about being specific on all of these requests. This seems too generic in nature, and I'd like to make sure that we honor the requests of the task force, include them in the process to get exactly what they'd like to see done, and this commission support it.
Sure. So we had a follow-up meeting on August 29th to give them an update on where we were. The next step was to take the things that they had recommended from the task force work and bring it to you in this form, which we've done. Yenny responded after the after the first discussion of legislation where the commission had questions about that issue, she responded and asked for an opportunity to meet with commissioners. The response to her was, when you were talking about this in an open forum, we would try to inform them so that they wanted to show up and speak. They could sign up on the public forum and speak to you on this issue that way, as opposed to setting up a specific meeting with all 5 commissioners. If you wish to set up a meeting, if 3 of the 5 commissioners vote to set up a meeting specifically with the task force, then we will make that happen. But what I recommended is that they come to one of these meetings, sign up on the public agenda, and speak to you about that issue if they feel passionate about it. Now, Yenny was the only one. Tracy Mason chimed in as well. I heard from no other task force members on this issue except those 2. I do know that some task force members, Mr. Mason, in conjunction with some other folks, have been up lobbying in Topeka, working through the Sheriff's Association and working probably with Senator Godot and others on this issue, asking for some legislative support on their own. So there's a lot of things going on here. In order to coordinate all those, I suppose that we could, I can reach out to the senator and find out what action she's been asked to take or what she's going to do. You may already know that. And we could include some of that information in the next discussion on legislation so the commission can consider that.
So let me understand if I hear you correctly, it is either to come here and speak at a commission meeting or have a follow-up meeting request. She needs to make that formal request. It seems like she already made it. So that's why I'm a little confused.
She made a request. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Counselor can correct me if I'm wrong, but if we pull all 5 commissioners into a meeting with the task force, that's a public meeting.
Sure.
I've had one task force member request that, and I've had no direction from the commission that you wish as a body to meet collectively, all 5 of you, with the task force. So if somebody gives me some direction and guidance on that, I'll be happy to set that up.
Well, I think the discussion around this legislative platform as a whole is to be specific with each bullet. We're not doing that here. And so how could we get to something specific that our lobbyists can go lobby for us? And if this commission doesn't want to support that, then that's fine. But I'd like to have that conversation. Sure. And I would be advocating to honor the requests of our task force members to meet with them, because if the post audit isn't the correct way to go, then let's help them and let's decide what is the best way to go about this, so that this doesn't happen again in our community, because that's the end goal. Yeah. So however we need to get to that, I'd like to figure out outside of this meeting what the best way to have a meeting with commissioners, with the task force, because I believe that is the next step. I don't believe coming up here to this podium would really be a chance to dialogue and have a discussion, because we don't want to make sausage from the bench here. I think having an outside meeting is important. So I would personally request, as the district commissioner for the 4th district, to have that meeting with the task force.
Okay. And I think what we've been trying to do is figure out, if the post audit is not the place to do it, then we don't need to waste time talking about that. If we can figure out with the folks in Topeka what the proper venue is, then we can take that to the task force. You can have the meeting and say, here's what we've learned through our research. This is the best option. Does this meet what you're trying to achieve? Do you support this? And ask for their input on that. So we've been trying to reach a point where we understood perhaps what the best venue is.
I think the next logical step maybe would be to talk to Senator Godot or South Central delegation. Let's work together on this to get the language right or the venue right. The way it sets on our agenda historically did not seem to be the right venue. Let's figure out what the right venue is so that we can take forward what the task force has asked. Give us an opportunity between this week and next week to reach out to the state and get some more clarity on that. And if necessary or if needed, we'll be glad to have a meeting with task force as a body or task force members.
Presently, it's not on the calendar yet. Presently, the intention is to have the next, basically the 6-month follow-up with the task force, approximately the 8th of December. That would be in advance of the South Central delegation meeting here in Sedgwick County. So, and if we need to meet before December 8th, again, between now and next week, if we hone this a little bit more, then if you still want to have a meeting with select commissioners in the task force or all commissioners in the task force, we can get that scheduled in early November before you vote on a final agenda. And then we'll still proceed with the 6-month follow-up in December in advance of the South Central delegation being here for the public forum.
So what is the projected adoption date of this?
What we'd like to shoot for November 12th, but honestly, as long as we beat the South Central delegation get-together where we present our platform to them formally, which is in December sometime, as long as we beat that, I think we're okay. So we have some time.
Could we solidify that December date? Do we know that?
Yes. I'll put it on a calendar.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Meitzner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could just throw an idea out there on this document, it continues to be quite large for me, and you pointed out, Tom, early, some of these things are state issues that we're trying to take a statewide issue and localize it. And if I was just trying to, I guess I'd take our Jason Watkins' direction on this idea, but I personally just think that that first bullet, and also instead of putting dots, can we put numbers on these in the future so we can reference?
We can, Commissioner, and I talked with the chairman earlier. We need to start giving you red line versions of this so you can see changes as they happen. But yes, we'll change the format of that.
Well, obviously the first one is huge on mental health behavior, the regional hospital. On ComCare, personally, I like the first bullet, which I think is a staffing shortage, that some of this other stuff falls into place. If I was doing ComCare, I'd maybe expand that first bullet with another sentence or two, but I just would keep it as a one bullet thing. On the corrections part that was just being discussed, I am for supplying the task force, the total task force findings on all their findings, and give that to all the support, giving that to all the legislators for the legislative considerations, and all the departments like the foster programs and some of the other Department of Children and Families, all of the state departments that are outside legislative but have an impact on that event. So I would be more for sharing the whole document instead of one part and in one area, highlighting that. But that's just my thoughts on that. On the next section, I like the item number, the third bullet. That's about it. And then out of respect for what we've done before, the last page, the driver's license suspension. So if we were going to downsize this to about 5 items, that's what I would do. No disrespect to the departments of the fire and finance and HR and public works, but I don't. Just knowing how that works up there, it's kind of hard to give a massive document and not be focused on the most important. So that's just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that last point that Commissioner Meitzner just made, I think we ought to have 2 documents. One of them is this, in its final version, whatever ends up being on there. And then, of course, we have the business card size, which has got 2 or 3 things on it that we can hand out in the elevator. So I think we ought to have 2 versions. One is directions to our lobbyists, and hopefully we'll find legislators that are sympathetic to our positions, and we'll have legislation drafted on each one of these things. And again, it's one of the things I've been talking about. If you can't figure out how to write the bill, then maybe it doesn't belong on here. We need to be very specific to the legislature. What exactly are we asking for? So if it's very squishy, we're not sure exactly what we're asking for. Maybe it doesn't belong on here. When we go to adopt this, by the way, I would like to have a printout version of this in the future. I have it emailed, but I didn't print it out, and so I'm doing this virtually, which is fine. But I'd like to be able to have a paper copy of this as we talk about this in future meetings.
Is there not one at your desk?
Is there?
I got one.
Not that I see. No. Thank you. Thank you for the paper copy. Are we going to be voting on these one by one to see if they belong on this document?
Ultimately, we'll have to. We're trying to get this clean and as possible, but ultimately, I think the commission will have to make decisions individually so that we have good, clear direction by vote on how you want this to look.
Very good. So I think what things end up on the final document, I think I think we're going to have to break it down to find out what that is exactly. With respect to Commissioner Cruz's comments on the stand your ground, the last meeting I came prepared with some data to kind of talk about some of the reasons why I believe what I believe. But let me just say this. If I remember correctly, I think there's 28 states now that have stand your ground laws. These are all fairly recent changes. I mean, the country seems to be moving in that direction. I'm not sure of any state that's actually repealed their stand your ground law. I am concerned about spending political collateral on something that I don't think has a likelihood of getting good reception in Topeka. If we spend a lot of effort focused on something that's not going to go anywhere, we have less opportunities to talk about other things maybe more important on our platform. So if this is going to be on there, then I think we're going to spend some time on something that I don't think has much chance of being received well in Topeka. I also wanted to just reflect on the fact that when we asked the task force to take a look at the Sedgwick Lofton case, we wanted them to look at processes and procedures, I think, internally to find out what can we do in Sedgwick County that might impact a case like Sedgwick Lofton. What can we change? Where was our deficiencies? What should we change? This issue of the task force identifying a state law. Let me ask a question. Who else besides myself has even read the Stand Your Ground law? I have, numerous times. And the idea is that it's based on the Constitution, that we have a constitutional right to defend ourselves. And if you constitutionally defend yourself, you shouldn't be prosecuted as if you committed a crime. And under the 14th Amendment, you really can't have a law for the citizens, and it doesn't apply also to the officers. But there's an underlying truth here, and that is the task force believes that the JIAC staff murdered Sedgwick Lofton, and that's the word they use. They put out wanted posters, maybe not the task force directly, but people on the task force were involved, putting out wanted posters, wanted for murder, naming our 5 JIAC staff, and that was extremely offensive. Let's be clear, the district attorney made it clear to me at least, and I'm sure if you ask him, he'll say the same thing to anybody who asks him. Regardless of the Stand Your Ground law, he would not have prosecuted these people because there wasn't evidence to support a charge. So the Stand Your Ground law is a distraction, and in my opinion, it's motivated because they believe the crime was committed and these people got off because of Stand Your Ground law, when in fact there would have been no charges anyway. And that's the narrative. So if we can simply accept that truth, why is the task force asking us to support a review of Stand Your Ground law if it has nothing to do with the Sedgwick Lofton case? Because the task force is all about the Sedgwick Lofton case, right? Would we even have this on our platform at all if it wasn't for the Sedgwick Lofton case? I don't think we would. At the end of the day, we have a constitutional right to defend ourselves, and the states have moved in that direction, at least 28 of them at this point, and I'm not aware of any state that's repealed that. And I don't think Kansas is going to repeal it either. And go read the law. There's nothing in the law that actually sets us up for some type of way for law enforcement to get away with murder. That did not happen, and that's not what happened here. In fact, the state Supreme Court actually overturned the lower court decision that actually provided Stand Your Ground defense for an officer in Wichita that shot at a dog that was threatening that officer, and he missed, and the bullet ricocheted and hit a child. And they used the Stand Your Ground law. The Supreme Court said that Stand Your Ground law does not apply. He's going to stand on his own to say the Stand Your Ground law does not give him a defense. So at the end of the day, I don't know that I see a problem with the Stand Your Ground law, and it certainly has nothing to do with Sedgwick Lofton task force. So I'm concerned that the task force thinks this is their mission to have this reviewed. I don't think this has anything to do with Sedgwick Lofton. That's my point. If you guys want to talk about reviewing state laws, we can talk about all kinds of laws that should be reviewed. I have a problem with lots of different laws that need to be changed. But I'm not a legislator today. And so if we're simply going to pick out laws that need to be reviewed because we think there's something wrong with them, there's a long list of things we could talk about. This Stand Your Ground law does not belong on this list. So I'll just stop with that. Thank you for listening to me. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you. I'm quite appalled. I think your comments are very insensitive. When you have the Senate President, Ty Masterson, a Republican from Andover, saying, I don't know how you apply stand your ground to that scenario, meaning the homicide as deemed by our coroner, that the death of Sedgwick Lofton, using the stand your ground law to justify not pressing charges. It is absolutely about Sedgwick Lofton. It is absolutely about making sure this doesn't happen again. You might as well slap the face of every single task member right now. This is pure insanity to say that the work of this community, that this commission charged with making sure this doesn't happen again, when they request something, we're not asking to repeal it. They're asking to take a look at it as it relates to in-custody deaths. This is important for this community to understand. We do support this task force. We do want to make sure that we have the right language. And I'm shocked that you would say these kinds of things in an open forum regarding the hard work that these volunteers spent multiple hours that they didn't even have to ensure that the homicide of Sedgwick Lofton was looked into. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't really want to debate this, but let's be clear. I'm going to ask Mr. Papoon, is the word homicide and the word murder equivalent, or is there a difference?
I do not believe the word homicide that was used in the autopsy is equivalent to the word murder. No,
Thank you.
At least I've gotten that from the district attorney.
Yeah, and again, let's be clear. If anybody wants to challenge what I just said, please go ask the Attorney General whether or not he would have levied charges had the stand your ground law not been a part of our Kansas laws. He was very clear. The stand your ground law is not why he chose not to prosecute them. There was not evidence to support a charge of murder, okay? So when someone disregards what he said and they create wanted for murder posters for our staff, that is unbelievably insensitive and offensive. And I think that the task force needs to understand the charges would not be levied regardless. And by the way, I said, if you don't believe the district attorney is correct, please do a citizen grand jury. I actually offered to help them. Because the citizen's grand jury, and by the way, Mark Bennett even supported the idea. It second guesses his decision not to charge. A citizen's grand jury will look at the evidence and they would make charges in place of the district attorney. So if you believe that the district attorney is incorrect, that there was actually evidence to support charges of murder on these staff, the citizen's grand jury could have taken a look at that and they could make sure those charges move forward. They did not do that. I don't know why. The task force, frankly, disregarded that opportunity. I don't know why. Also, I testified last session, we talk about legislative platform, I testified last year after Sedgwick Lofton's death on changes to Senate Bill 367. I testified specifically asking for a prohibition on rap restraints on juvenile offenders. I also asked for a prohibition on using the prone position other than transitional positioning, but using a prohibition on the prone position for juvenile offenders or anybody's in our custody. We would not have the right to use rap restraints or prone positioning for young people. And not one person in this community came out and backed me up. And I find that shocking. The task force needs to focus on those types of issues. And I think they missed an opportunity to provide support to that. I think that's all my comments. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Lopez.
Thank you. When this was originally brought up and we had the first conversation about what our legislative platform is going to be, we asked for more time. And I think this is why, because obviously it's an emotional topic that people are going to get heated on. And I don't necessarily think this is the time or the place to have this kind of conversation when we're going to be saying these things to our colleagues. At the end of the day, I think it's really important to remember that stand your ground law is a state issue. We do not get to decide what happens with it. So we can add something to our platform and advocate on a certain position, but it is not up to the county commissioners to change anything with Stand Your Ground. So I'm very happy to hear that people at the state level are looking into this, because that's at the end of the day, that's who needs to be doing it. It's, like I said, it's not something we can change. So we will continue to have these conversations when it comes to Stand Your Ground to see what happens with our legislative platform and how that's going to fit into this or not. But I think we just need a reminder that it is a state issue and we cannot change it here from the bench. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anything else on legislative platform. Madam Clerk, next item.
Committee reports.
Do any commissioners have anything for committee reports today? Seeing nothing, Madam Clerk, next item.
Other.
Commissioners, Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. I am making a formal request to have an open meeting around the discussion of the opioid litigation settlement money. When can we get that on our platform, or when can we get that on our calendar to discuss? I'd like to include some people from Safe Streets, Lisa Veda, Dr. Daniel Warren, and anyone else that would like to be involved in this discussion. We have talked about it. I tried to discuss it. It was shut down at a meeting. Commissioners discussed it last night at the health forum, so I believe that there could be some potential interest in discussing how we're going to be spending this money. I think it's important that we put it on the calendar to at least discuss it, and have the opportunity for community members to voice their opinions who are working in the addiction space. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have anything during other? I've got a couple things. First thing is that Commissioner Lopez and I are going to KAC next week. As I look through the agenda, one of the things on the agenda is the opioid settlement, so we may be able to bring some information back depending on how our calendars work out. We do have a board meeting next Wednesday on the 19th, so Commissioner Lopez and I will be back. We'll be leaving there Tuesday and be back for the board meeting on Wednesday. So we won't be there during the entire KAC meeting. A couple other brief things. This weekend is the 41st annual Wichita Asian Festival. It's at Century 2, and there are some judging events going to take place. There's some food festival. The festival performances run from 5 to 8 p.m. at Century 2, and then there's a pageant from 8 to 9:15 p.m. And I should have printed off a list of the judges, but I am one of the judges this weekend, so I look forward to attending the 41st Annual Wichita Asian Festival. Finally, we did begin the meeting this morning with a moment of silence and a prayer for Deputy Carter. I just want to let everyone know that there is a funeral service going to be held at 11 a.m. on Friday, October 14th at St. Francis of Assisi Catholic Church. It's at 8861 North Socorro in Wichita, and graveside services at Rest Haven Cemetery at 11800 US 54 will commence following the funeral service at St. Francis. That's all I have. Commissioner Cruz.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity. I almost forgot. This Saturday, Vamos Namar Fiesta will be happening at 21st and Market. It's from 4 to 10 p.m. There'll be a lot of music and food, so come out and celebrate. Thank you.
Commissioners, anything else during other? We do not have a requirement for an executive session today. Anything else need to come before the board? Seeing nothing, we're adjourned. Thank you all.